class in our country is in deep trouble. Some would argue the middle class is collapsing. And the people of our country are looking to Washington for us to get something done. And what they're finding is a filibuster on a corrections bill and inactivity in every single area that faces working people in our country. Madam President, a couple of weeks ago in Vermont, we held several town meetings on the economy. And what I did is I invited Vermonters to respond to our website about what the collapse of the middle class means to them personally. I think it's one thing for those of us to give a speech, to use huge numbers, to talk in an abstract way. It is another thing to hear directly from people in terms of what is going on in their lives. And what I promised that I would do and continue to do is read some of these very poignant emails that I receive, mostly from Vermont, sometimes from other parts of the country, where people are simply saying, look, this is what is going on in my life today. I thought I was in the middle class, but I no longer am. And so, Madam President, what I just want to do is read a few of the emails that I received to put what we are debating and discussing here in a very personal tone, in the real words of real Americans. This is the collapse of the middle class as described by ordinary people. We received an email from an older couple in the state of Vermont, and this is what they write. The woman writes, quote, "My husband and I are retired and 65. We would like to have worked longer, but because of injuries caused at work and the closing of our factory to go to Canada, we chose to retire earlier. Now, with oil prices the way they are, we cannot afford to heat our home unless my husband cuts and splits wood, which is a real hardship, as he has had his back fused and should not be working most of the day to keep up with the wood. Not only that, he has to get up 2 to 3 times each night to keep the fire going. We also have a 2003 car that we only get to drive to get groceries or go to the doctor or to visit my mother in the nursing home 3 miles away. It now costs us $80 a month to go nowhere. We have 42,000 miles on a 5-year-old car. I have Medicare, but I can't afford prescription coverage unless I take my money out of an annuity, which is supposed to cover the house payment when my husband's pension is gone. We also only eat 2 meals a day to conserve." This is a 65-year-old couple in the state of Vermont in the year 2008. And Madam President, I suspect this story is being told all over America. Here's another story about a woman who lives in our largest county, Chittenden County. And she writes, "First of all, I am a single mother of a 16-year-old daughter. I own a condominium. I have worked at the hospital for 16 years and make a very good salary in the high $40,000 range. I own a 2005 Honda Civic. I filled up my gas tank yesterday, and it cost me almost $43. That was at $3.22 per gallon. If prices stay at that level, it will cost me $160 per month to fill up my gas tank. A year ago, it would have cost me approximately $80 per month. I now have to decide what errands I really need to run and what things I can do over the phone or the internet. But the other issue is if I use my cell phone too much during the month, my bill will increase, and that will cost me more money. I feel as though I am between a rock and a hard place no matter how hard I try to adjust my budget for the month. I am watching my purchases in the grocery store and department stores more closely because of increased prices. I am not sure that I can afford to take a summer vacation this year. I usually take a day off during my daughter's spring vacation so we can go shopping in New Hampshire somewhere. I have already canceled those plans for this year. I am hoping that I can take a few days off this summer to go to Maine. We will see how the gas prices are this summer, but I hear it is going to get worse. Not much hope for someone on a tight budget. End of letter. Here we have somebody who asked nothing more than be able to take a few days off with her daughter to go shopping. Somebody who works very, very hard. Can't even do that because the price of gas is soaring. Here is another email that comes from a woman living in a small town in Vermont. This is what she writes. Yesterday, I paid for our latest home heating fuel delivery, $1,100. I also paid my $2,000 plus credit card balance, much of which bought gas and groceries for the month. My husband and I are very nervous about what will happen to us when we are old. Although we have 3 jobs between us and participate in a 403B retirement plan, we have not saved enough for a realistic post-work life if we survive to our life expectancy. As we approach the traditional retirement age, we are slowly paying off our daughter's college tuition loan and trying to keep our heads above water. We have always lived frugally. We buy used cars and store-brand groceries, recycle everything, walk or carpool when possible, and plastic our windows each fall. Even so, if and when our son decides to attend college, we will be in deep debt at age 65. P.S. Please don't use my name. I live in a small town, and this is so embarrassing. End of quote. Well, it is not embarrassing. That is a story being told from one end of this country to the other. People who thought that after working their entire lives, they would be able to retire with a little bit of security and a little bit of dignity are now wondering, in fact, whether they will be able to survive at all. After working your whole life and being frugal, you should not have to retire in debt, dependent upon a credit card. Now, let me just read an email that I received from a young person. And the emails that we receive from people who are young, middle-aged, and old, each one in its own way, a work of poetry because it comes from people's hearts. It is poignant. It is true. This is what a younger person in Vermont writes. Quote, I am 23 years old. I have about $33,000 of education debt plus $12,000 of credit card debt and only make about $26,000 a year plus benefits. I barely make enough to support myself, and whenever unexpected expenses come up, I end up having to use credit to cover it. I feel like I will never catch up, and now everything is getting even more expensive. It seems hopeless. Meanwhile, I listen to the news and how the rich are getting richer, and it is making me hate this country. I am not an economics expert, but I know that things could be done differently to help people like me who work hard and get little in return, instead of rewarding those who have the ability to use their money to make more money. End of quote. Well, we just heard Senator Dorgan talk about the huge tax breaks that go to some of the wealthiest people in this country, people who don't pay their taxes because they move to the Cayman Islands and set up phony front offices. And this writer, who may not have a PhD in economics, hit it right on the head. This young man, these old people are the people that we should start worrying about, not the wealthiest people in this country who are having it very, very good. Let me just talk briefly about a woman, and this is another angle, another piece of reality. She writes, and I quote, as a couple with one child earning about $55,000 a year, we have been able to eat out a bit, buy groceries and health insurance, contribute to our retirement funds, and live in a relatively comfortable life financially. We've never accumulated a lot of savings, but our bills were always paid on time, and we never had any interest on our credit card. Over the last year, even though we've tightened our belts, not eating out much, watching purchases at the grocery store, not buying extras like a new TV, repairing the washer instead of buying a new one, and we find ourselves with over $7,000 of credit card debt and trying to figure out how to pay for braces for our son. I work 50 hours per week to help earn extra money to catch up, but that also takes a toll on the family life. Not spending those 10 hours at home with my husband and son makes a big difference for all of us. My husband hasn't had a raise in 3 years, and his employer is looking to cut out any extra benefits they can to lower their expenses, which will increase ours." End of quote. Now, here is a woman who has to work longer hours in order to try to catch up, and she can't spend time with her husband and her family, which is what her life is about. How many millions of people are in the same boat? Madam President, what is not usually talked about on the floor of the Senate is the fact that here in the United States, our people work longer hours than do the people of any other industrialized country. Not talked about terribly often is that to make ends meet now, in the vast majority of middle-class life, you need both the husband and the wife working long hours. And despite those two incomes, people have less disposable income today than 30 years ago in a one-income family. But when you talk about the collapse of the middle class, one of the manifestations of it is that people have got to claw and scratch and work so hard that their family lives deteriorate. In this case, a woman cannot even spend the time she would like with her son and her husband. Here is just a few more letters, emails. This comes from a veteran from the state of Vermont. Quote, "The real killer is the price of heating fuel. Up here in northern Vermont, we need heat in the winter. With a military pension, I make too much to get any assistance. We got a 2.8% pension increase in January, and the price of heating fuel has increased by about 50%. We have to cut back on food in order to stay warm. Thank you." End of quote. Somebody trying to live on a military pension goes up 2.8%. Price of home heating fuel soars, not making it. And this is another short email that we received. Quote, "The company I work for has just announced a raise freeze, which means not even a cost of living increase can be expected this year. This will be tough for us, as we were counting on at least a cost of living increase in a year where the cost of living has surely increased via groceries, fuel, wood, gasoline, etc." Let me just finish, Madam President, by reading an email from another young Vermonter. And this is what he says, and I quote, "As a graduating law student, I am particularly concerned with the potential reduction of jobs available to me. I am leaving school with a great amount of debt in student loans and credit cards and entering the uncertain job market. I currently pay a tremendous amount of money in rent. I would like to work in poverty law, but those jobs only pay about $36,000, so it is unlikely going to happen." End of quote. So here's an example of a young man who goes to law school, wants to work in poverty law, but because his debt is so high and the interest rates on that debt are so high, he no longer has a choice in careers. And this is happening to young people all over our country. Madam President, the middle class in America is collapsing, poverty is increasing, and the gap between the very, very wealthy and everybody else is growing wider. And today, we have by far the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth. We are the only major country on this planet without a national health care program. Cost of college education very high. While the oil companies make huge profits, our people can't afford to fill up their gas tanks. As Senator Dorgan said a moment ago, the time is long overdue for this Congress to start focusing on the real issues facing ordinary Americans. The time is now for us to develop the courage to stand up to the big money interests, to the 35,000 lobbyists who surround us every day, to the big campaign contributors who want benefits for the wealthy and the powerful. We have an obligation to stand up for the middle class, and I hope we can begin doing that as soon as possible. Madam President, I yield the floor.